I just want to welcome you all this evening, and I'm sorry you have to put up with me tonight, but I tried to get someone to cover, but nobody was available, so I'm afraid you've got me instead. But I want to just read a few verses before we start, or as we start. Very well known verses in Isaiah 40, starting at verse 28. Have you not known? Have you not heard? The Lord is the everlasting God, the creator of ends of the earth. He does not faint or grow weary. His understanding is unsearchable. He gives power to the faint, and to him who has no might, he increases strength. Even youths shall grow faint and be weary, and young men shall fall exhausted. But they who wait for the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint. Now, having read those verses, I'm not going to say much more about them. I'm going to refer to them later on. But when I was a young Christian, in the early days, I was advised or encouraged to buy a book. And most of you know me, I don't do a lot of reading. But I got the book anyway, and the book was entitled Sit, Walk, Stand by Watchman Nee. Now, I don't know much about the content of the book because I maybe read 3 or 4 pages and that's about it. But what I do know is that it was a wee study in the book of Ephesians. And I was sitting in the graduation service a few weeks ago, watching Graham getting his graduation certificates. And the speaker got up to speak, and he spoke from 3 John, and he started to talk about walking in love. And I don't know much about what he said, but I started to take notes because my mind started to wander, and I thought about this book, Sit, Walk, Stand. Even though we don't know much about the content of the book. So what you're hearing tonight is not out of the book. I didn't copy the book, any of the pages of the book. But I began to think, what is this all about? And I thought about spiritual exercise. So we're here tonight, and we're going to do some spiritual exercise. I hope you're up for it. So the first thing I want to do tonight is Ephesians 5. Paul tells us to be imitators of God, beloved children, and walk in love as Christ loved us and gave himself for us, a fragrant offering and sacrifice to God. So the first thing we're going to do tonight, we're going to walk. And Paul tells us to walk in love. Well, what does that entail? How do we walk in love? Let's cast your mind back when we were young and we were thinking about falling in love. And you see someone and you think, he or she's okay. Wouldn't mind getting to know that person. And I can remember very well being involved with EYM at our Portrush annual reunion of our summer camp. And of course, Kathleen was there. And I was more or less coerced to taking Kathleen for a walk. And I think if I hadn't asked Kathleen for the walk, she would have asked me to go for the walk. But the rest's history. But as you walk along, you start and you laugh and you talk and a bit of frivolity. And then as the walk maybe progresses, you maybe even venture to grab a hand, or put an arm around the waist. And it's easy to walk with someone you like. And Paul's exhorting us here to walk in love as Christ's example. He loved us. And we are to walk in love with each other in our individual walks. And it's easy to walk with someone you like or someone you love. It's not so easy when you're walking with someone you don't agree with in every aspect of life. Someone who's maybe a bit arrogant, a bit obnoxious, a bit opinionated. It's not as easy to walk in harmony or in love with such a person. But as a church family here, we're brothers and sisters, and we should walk in love with each other. We should respect each other, treat them as we would like them to treat us. And as I say, we don't necessarily have to agree with everything that they say or do, but we need to show love and respect. And I thank God that we have the reputation in this church as being a loving and caring church. A church where, if we've got a problem, we can feel confident in talking to someone about it, knowing that that confidence is not going to be shared with anyone else. We won't gossip to others about what they have shared with us. And we should, instead of gossiping, we should arrange to meet up with that person as many times as is necessary and let them talk, let us share there with them, offer to pray with them and uphold them in their difficulties. That's part of walking in love. And then Paul in 1 Corinthians 7:17 encourages to walk worthy of the calling wherewith we've been called. As Christians living on earth, we're God's representatives, and we should reflect the love of God in our speech and in our behaviour. When I was working as a sales representative, I was very aware that I wasn't just representing myself, I was representing the company. And in order for me to gain the customer's trust and get their business, I had to represent the company well. My behaviour, my speech, my honesty and integrity was foremost in gaining their trust and getting their orders. As a representative of Jesus Christ, we have a much more important task than me trying to sell particular products to a customer. We're presenting Jesus Christ to a dying world. And that's what we're all about. Walking worthy. And if our attitudes and our words and our actions betray a bad image of Jesus Christ, it's a bad testimony for ourselves. But when we go out those doors, we're representing this church as well, and we can be putting forward a bad testimony of the church. And we've often heard, I'm sure, people from one background saying, if that's what Christianity is, or if that's a Christian, I don't want anything to do with it. And we need to be careful as to how we live in this sinful world. And I know the old saying, sinful nature is still there. And it's hard times to do that. But we need to depend daily, hourly, on the Holy Spirit. So we've had a wee walk now. I know that our muscles are warmed up a wee bit. Let's go for a run. Hebrews 12:1 tells us that we're to run with patience the race that is set before us, looking to Jesus, who is our helper. To run the race, we need to have the finish line in view. We need to have the desire to win the prize. Before an athlete takes part in the race, what do? They strip off all their training gear. They take off anything that would hinder them from the race that they're about to venture on. Nothing carried in their pockets, nothing to weigh them down or screw them up. And in the Christian race, we need to do the very same thing. We need to leave aside all the old things that we have clung to in the past that will hinder our growth and spiritual maturity. And as we run that race, in order to achieve the prize. We need to be faithful servants. We need to be focused in our running, having the finish line in view. At the end of the race, the winner receives the prize. And at the end of our Christian race, we want to receive the prize. And the only way we can get that prize is by being faithful. And when we hear those words, well done, good and faithful servant. But you're probably sitting here thinking tonight, well, that's all very well, telling us how we should live and how we should walk and how we should live. But it's not easy. And I'm not pretending that it is. But, is there any answer to this question? Well, I think there's an answer to the question as to how we do it. And let's see, is an answer in the Bible. So after we've had a good walk and a good run, what do you need? A good rest. Jesus in Mark 6:31, after a busy day with his disciples, he says these words, come apart and rest a while. Now we live in a world that's busy. It's hard to believe that we'll soon be into June, the 6th month of the year. It seems no time since Christmas. But we're constantly on the go. We're constantly doing legitimate things. Things that can help us neglect our physical and our spiritual health. And Jesus realised the need for our good physical and spiritual health in order for us to be useful vessels for him and for his kingdom and for our families. Someone has said, if you don't come apart, you will come apart. And I can relate to this very easily. I mentioned EYM earlier. I was heavily involved with EYM, and we were involved in all sorts of ministries. Coffee bar missions, deputation meetings, here, there and yonder. Up in the morning, going to work, working all day, home at 6 o'clock at night, washed, dressed, changed, something to eat, out to a youth mission or a deputation meeting. Maybe as far away as Macrofelt, Lisburn, Lurgan, Portadown. Didn't matter where the mission was. We were there. Coming home late at night, 10:30, 11 o'clock, physically, mentally exhausted. No time to take time with God. We just rolled into bed, no quiet time, maybe a conscience-easing prayer, asking for forgiveness and thanking God for his help. Then up again next morning, washed, dressed, out to work, back home again next night, same thing, wash, rinse and repeat. And I began to realise that my spiritual well was running dry. And I couldn't give out as effectively as I ought to. And I had to pull back. I had to say, look, I can't go every night. I take time to be with myself and to be with the Lord. And the old hymn's right. Take time to be holy. And the late Corey Brennan, when he announced that hymn, he used to say, and it does, take time to be holy. And this is why I think it's so important that the psalmist in Psalm 46 in verse 10, he said, be still and know that I am God. As we're sitting still, we can reflect on God. We can reflect on God's magnificent creation, and these days we can see it in all its beauty. The birds are singing in the trees are in full bloom, the flowers are in bloom, the harvest is being cut. And we can reflect on his majesty He's the King of Kings and He's the Lord of Lords. We can reflect on His mercy. Each one of us here tonight, simply because of the mercy of God. And one day, every knee will bow, and every tongue will confess that Jesus Christ is Lord. The skeptic, the atheist, the agnostic will all one day bow the knee and acknowledge that Jesus Christ is Lord. I want to get back to those few verses in Isaiah just for a few moments. Isaiah 40 and these verses we read earlier. Have you not known? Have you not heard? The Lord is the everlasting God, the creator of the ends of the earth. He does not faint or grow weary. His understanding is unsearchable. He gives power to the faint, and to him who has no might, He increases strength. Even youths shall faint and be weary, and young men shall fall exhausted. That's just how I felt some nights after coming in from a late night, here I am, or even some other events as well. But then these are the wonderful verses. Verse 31. But they who wait for the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles. They shall run and not be weary, and they shall walk and not faint. The majesty of an eagle, that wingspan, biggest bird in the creation, that flies above every other bird in the sky. You see that massive wingspan and how it just glides on the currents of the air. We can rise up above the difficulties and the trials that bring us down. But only when we wait on the Lord. Then He will renew our strength. And then we can run and not grow weary. And we can walk and not faint. There is an answer to walking and running the Christian race successfully. And I trust that these few remarks this evening have been a help to you as much as they've been to me, and that will encourage us to keep on keeping on towards the finish line, because one day we're told that a crown of glory awaits us in the heavenly mansions.